Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. This is the show, and I'm going to do it, where we get under the hat. It's franchising. 2 hats today. And it is a live show. Well, it's live if it's June the 17th at 5:15 in the UK or 12:15 in various bits of America. And if it's live, and if you're here live, then we love you to get involved because this show is for you. Each week, we take a different topic in the world of franchising, and we have a lovely guest. And today is absolutely no exception to that. We don't just have a lovely guest, we have a legend of a guest. The very first guest on this show. And we're going to hear all about that in a minute. We have the wonderful Don Cohen. So first of all, Don, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Harvey. I know we've done so many shows in the past, and every one of them left me with more value than I started. And hopefully that's what we could share with the audience, is come out better, smarter, and a little bit more motivated after everything we've been able to talk about. And I know this show is about attitude and how important that can be.
Fantastic. Well, look, if you are here live, pop a comment in, because this show is about our community. You are the directors, you are the producers of this show. So our conversation goes the way that you wish it to go. Before this, I always like to do a lot of prep, and I'll show you. There's the prep I've done. And the reason that there's nothing written down is because, of course, this is a conversation. It's informal. And it's not a conversation just between myself and Don. It's a conversation that's led by you. And the topic today is franchise mindset. Now, I'm going to introduce Don to you. Now, Don is a very special person to me. And Don is, people ask me the origin story of my hat. Well, sitting in front of you right here is the origin story of the hat. So I've said many times how I've met Don and how he's taught me everything I know about live streaming. But let's hear it from the man himself. Perhaps before we get into the subject of mindset, give our community, our audience, an understanding of how you met me.
Well, that's a great question to launch with. Harvey actually is a great success story that I'm so proud of being part of. His evolution into live streaming. Harvey was just another person in the audience initially, and just like Harvey, I'm very sensitive to who's here and their contributions. Always want to continue to expand those relationships, and after a few sites of Harvey as the commenter naturally lent itself to a Zoom call, which lent itself to a guest appearance, which lent itself to a continuing co-host opportunity on Fridays and Sundays, along with Kelly Stanecki and so many other wonderful people. And then Harvey launched the Franchise Show, which I couldn't have been a bigger supporter of, especially as being honored to be the first inauguration guest to be on. And if I didn't see who was doing the show, I would think it was me because of Harvey's good nature, but also his belief and confidence that you can take it as it goes and don't have to have prepared questions and scripts and things like that. And it's more fun. And you usually lends itself to following what the last person said instead of anticipating what the audience may want to hear. So that's what got us to where we are today. And it was, a privilege to have Harvey invite me back. And in turn, I'm going to have Harvey on my show, which is Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And I see we have so many people in the audience that I know. Penny, and also Omar's here. Omar's just a wonderful guy who's put me on a lot of his shows and vice versa. I see Simon's here. It's great to see an audience, and it's great to see such a lovely audience.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dom, for that lovely introduction, and the introduction to, of course, how we met each other as well. So the topic today is mindset. Now, of course, the wonderful show that you were talking about was Hour of Empower. And one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on today to talk about mindset was, of course, that show was all about mindset. It was all about how people were feeling. Um, Perhaps explain a little bit about how and why you got into mindset and why that was important to try and bring that to a community and help add value there.
Wonderful question, Harvey. I can always count on you for great questions. And it's a good question because when I initially started live streaming, I was relatively new to it. And my focus was how to share my concepts and strategies towards LinkedIn. And it was the first shows were coming a little bit after COVID. And after about a week and a half, everybody was talking about depression, anxiety, PTSD, and we just switched to really focus on that. And because of that, I was able to attract so many wonderful individuals who were in the coaching, therapy area, and it really built towards that hour of empower. So, that's how it all kind of came to be. And since then, I've done almost 1,000 live streams, about 700 in a row. We were just talking about it prior to going live. And that's, to me, I don't understand how I was able to do it. But if you do anything one day at a time and just work with it and not get overwhelmed by the future and not get too dragged back by the past. And it's also who you're with. So if it was just me doing it, I probably would have done a few shows, but because of the quality and caliber of the people I was involved with and still involved with, and that's really the beauty of this, is the relationships you build. So yeah, I couldn't have been happier, and so excited about the future too.
No, fantastic. And you're right, it is about the relationships you build. I spoke to someone very recently and they were talking about they had 200,000 or 300,000 followers. And I said, you know what, it's not about how many, it's about who and what you do together and how much value you add together. And he agreed with that. Well, look, before we get too far into this, unfortunately, my chat isn't working on this, but I am going to recognize everybody who's here because it's very important to me. So we have the fantastic Tim Morris. And look at that, Tim. We have your QR code up on the screen, my friend. Tim is, of course, one of our lovely supporters and is from the Bridge. Now, and Tim's put, evening, Harvey, and great to finally meet you, Don. We have heard so much about you. Well, of course, I always talk about Don and everything that we have done together and how this has come to be. So great to have you here, Tim. Keep putting the comments in because I can see them through another way. And of course, we have the lovely Penny Hopkinson. I know that, Don, you know Penny as well, and good to have Penny with us. Penny has been a supporter of the show pretty much since the beginning, I would say. And of course, I've always been a big supporter of Penny, ops manuals, and everything that she does for our wonderful industry. And it would be amiss of me not to show her book. Now, is it going to be the right way round today? No, it's not. If you want to get your ops manuals the right way round, then talk to Penny. QR code is on the screen. Who else do we have? We've got Joe Caruso with us, the legend that is Joe Caruso. And Joe has put, hey, Don and Harvey Tuck, brilliant to see you both. Well, it's always good to see you, Joe. Really looking forward to your comments on mindset and how important that is to you and to the people that you deal with in the franchise industry. So please pop a comment in. We have the lovely Neil Newman with us as well, and he's put, "Hi all, interested to understand more about this." Well, it's a really interesting subject, mindset. It's really important. It separates us out from one direction to another direction, how we're thinking about these things and how we feel. And before we get into that, we've also got Simon Wise with us. Fantastic to see you as well, Simon. And he's put, "Hello, franchise friends." So it's fantastic to have you with us, Simon. And finally, we have DJ Floors with us as well. And he is from the Inspection Boys. Now, DJ is going to be a guest on this show next week. Great to have you here. Great experiences in franchising, and it would be great to understand everyone's thoughts on what mindset you should have as a franchisor, as a franchisee, and how they can help you in your franchising journey. So let's get into this a little bit further before we start getting some questions from the audience, Don. You ran a business for many years. You were, of course, the tool king. Now you're cool. You were the tool king. I mean, how important was mindset when you were running that particular business, and how did that help you along the way?
Well, I think mindset is fundamental to any success because what you think, what you believe is typically what you end up doing. And if you're optimistic and confident and enjoy what you're doing, which is really a big element to mindset, it starts to reflect and project. There's people who say it's always your music, not your words, that people get affected by. So, if you're enthusiastic and excited, it really doesn't matter what you say, people will get excited around you. And that's that little extra competitive edge you have when you have believers, when you have people who are sharing what they believe is of value. And you can't do anything by yourself. Actually, a good guest on my show, Jason Gerardo, once said, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others. And I can see that you have really built a quality audience that continues to support the show and you, and so have I. And that's really what matters. It's not all the noise, it's the value that people bring together. And that motivates people, just to see people showing up, just to see people getting involved. And there's an obligation that one achieves by serving people. And the more people you serve, the more gets served back to you, but in its own good way. And I've always been relationship oriented, not transactional. And if you're a bigger person, you don't keep score every day. It takes too long, and it's really kind of petty. But you never know what you don't know. And sometimes one comment, one statement could turn it around for that person. I know that, we're hoping Leslie could join us, but Leslie was a big supporter of both of us, continues to support us on the guide every week, but also gave you the great advice as to focus on one or two things that are most primary. So, yeah, going to my business, it was 37 years. I was in it, owned my own companies all that time, and generated over $500 million in revenue, which was a significant amount, especially when you're talking 1980 and 1990 dollars. Which were a little bit more valuable. But, I built a team around attitude, and that just continued to make such a big difference. And, you need to laugh when things aren't good, and you need to laugh when things are good. So having a good sense of humor will help your mindset. And there's always a little silver lining in something, if nothing else, but to be curious as how something like that could happen. And, and that's what makes life so enjoyable is curiosity, trying to wonder what's behind the corner. That's one thing I was attracted to you, Harvey, is you always are positive. You always have something to think about, something to say, and willing to contribute to other people's success. So I give you a lot of credit, Harvey.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. It means a lot. We've still got comments coming in. I'm very sorry I can't put them up on the screen right now, but we've got a comment coming from Joe. And Joe's put, first time I saw this show, I thought it was a young Indiana Jones episode. And then I realized that it was not the case. I should have noticed there was no indie whip. Silly me. But look, that was definitely the reason I continue to wear the hat, because someone made a comment about Indiana Jones. That was enough to make me wear it again. We've got a couple of other people here. We've got Lisa Feverick here. Lisa has put Happy Tuesday, everyone. And we have Raisa here as well. And she's put hello, franchise hatters. Well, that's a good name. That's a good, I like that expression.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I might have to use that one. Look, one thing you said there, Don, which I really liked, was it's your music, not your words. And I'm going to pick up on that. I mean, mindset is really interesting for a franchise network. But I remember it was the rhythm of your show that was appealing. You always listened. You were always curious. And I think as a franchisor, if you can always be curious of your network of franchisees and always listen and let the rhythm of your business be directed a little bit more by your franchisees, I think that you get some really valuable insights into your business if you use these more than this one. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. And, that saying I usually share is no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. And, once you show an interest in people, they're going to show an interest back to you. And too many people take a position of entitlement or superiority, especially if you're running a business. The boss is usually the boss because they're the boss. But that by itself doesn't motivate people. It might keep people in line and might be you might have that quality, but I always had some compassion, sensitivity to people's feelings because I started with nothing and I knew what it was not to have a lot. And I knew what it was to try and get a job and get a good job and get a place where people really go out of their way to make you more successful. And I thought, if I ever have this opportunity, I'm going to remember what it was to be in that other person's shoes. So if you can respond to them, make them happy, because we have an obligation not only to the people, but to their time. Everybody who's visiting the show today could have been doing something else, decided to commit to this show. And I'm so honored and thankful for that. And it keeps us going because it was just us and nobody else came here. We wouldn't need we could just do a Zoom call. We wouldn't need a live stream. But what comes around goes around. And it's just being the bigger person and letting time take its course. And a lot of people are careful, maybe cautious. They're not really, get out of their own way sometimes. But if you give them a flight path, they'll usually take it. And I know how sensitive you are to making sure everybody has a quality time. I know we don't get into negativity. People don't want any more of what they can get on their own. They want to find something that's different, something that's interesting. And, I think people like routine, and I think that's what I've done and you've done is have the show on a consistent time, consistent day. So it's not, is the show today or tomorrow? And, I think we both take pleasure in seeing other people enjoy themselves, attain success, because vicariously we're living with and through those people. And, I know you've helped so many people. I think I've helped 30, 40 people at least develop their own show, and they were able to fly the coop and fly high. And that's something that's very rewarding, because in essence, you're leaving a legacy. Plus, all of these shows are on YouTube, from my standpoint. So, my grandkids one day could see their grandfather talking to a bunch of fun, interesting people, and maybe it'll take the place of something else on the internet. But yeah, there's all kinds of wonderful value. And I think it's changed my life for the better. And I had a pretty good life before this. So I can't say enough.
No, absolutely. You make some really, really interesting points. I'm so sorry today that we can't appear to get the chat up on the screen. I've just got a spinning circle there. But you know what? This is what it's partly about. This is live. And when it's live, you have to do your best around it. We also have Usman here as well. And he's put, hello, everyone. Well, great to have you with us. And it's going to be really interesting to hear your thoughts as well as an audience about mindset. I know that you're not a franchise expert as such, but you've been in business. You understand the franchise model. You understand the business model, and it's very similar. Franchising is obviously a way of scaling a business. In fact, last time you were on, I think that's exactly what we spoke about: scaling a business. When you were growing your business, you said there about listening and empathizing. I know you took your staff out for meals and all these sorts of things. They clearly saw your mindset was about them. You really focused on your people. Franchising is all about people. It's all about your franchisees or your end customers, and it was the same for you. You focused on your team, you focused on those customers, making them feel special, didn't you?
Yeah, and starting the business from scratch, because I bootstrapped it with a car loan, and that's all I had, me and my wife and our little poodle that we acquired when we came out to Colorado. And we didn't even have enough inventory to go more than weekends. So it took us, I made a promotion out of it. It was wholesale, open to the public Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only. So it seemed very special. And within a week, within about 6 weeks, we went 7 days a week. Within 3 months, we opened our second store. And in our first year, we qualified as an Inc. 500 company. Now it's an Inc. 5000, they rate it. And they actually made it 3 years in a row, which we were growing our business at about 300% every year, which was fun, especially when I was in my 20s, actually. And when you got that much energy and ambition, you think you can conquer the world. And we also attracted people like ourselves. So when I hired my first employee, that was after I had already found more things to do. So I never sat around and watched somebody. But the beauty of it is I did every job I ever had to hire for. So I knew what was involved in it. I knew how to treat people. And, it reflects on the customer. So it's not just helping your employees, but helping them help your customers, who ultimately pays everybody's paycheck. And to your earlier thought, just like franchisors, some have company stores and some have franchise stores. Well, I had 9 stores in Colorado, then I expanded out to the Midwest. You have to have systems, you have to have structure, you have to have operating manuals, you have to have support for your managers and your teammates. So there's quite a similarity between what I was doing and what people in franchising was doing. The difference is, owning your own stores, you have far more control, and you don't have to worry about, did someone feel they got their fair share, and if you can put incentives in place, bonuses, performance metrics and standards, they can reap the benefit. And ultimately, I made everybody an equity player and had ownership in the company. So, people don't want a job, they want a future, they want an opportunity. And, I used to get all the families involved. Every month, they had a bowling night for the whole family, and people would come out, had miniature golf, concerts, baseball games, because when you start talking to the spouses, the parents, the brothers and sisters, they start to think, hey, this is a pretty good company. These are pretty good people. And when someone has to work that extra day or not be able to make it to some event, there's some reserve goodwill there. So it's really thinking a couple steps ahead, and then being true to your word. When you say something, you do it. When you bring people in, the hardest thing about business is when you have to let people go. And sometimes you have to do it during not so good times. It wasn't their fault, just economic situations. And it makes you appreciate people. And before you hire the next person, you really are making sure you've got a future for them, and to be straight with people. I think when you're honest and sincere, it makes all the difference.
Absolutely. I mean, I always start off with nothing written down on these things, but I always finish with a heck of a lot of value, not just from yourself, Don, but from our fantastic community and from our fantastic audience. I'm going to touch on a few points that you've said, and then we're going to move on to a comment from the lovely Tim Morris. One thing that I really liked when you said there that you did every job that you hired for. Now, I'm taking this now to a franchise business. And of course, when you start a business, and not all businesses, of course, can be franchised, but when you start a business and you then look to find a franchisee, and you look to find somebody who shares the same values as you, I think if you have been a franchisee, or if you've done at least the tasks and the jobs and you felt what it was like, I think it's so important. It's such a strong mindset to have, that empathy, so that you understand and you can empathize with a franchisee if you've done that job. I think, you made a really, really good point there. Love it. I'm going to move on to a question here from Tim. Let's see what we make of this one. Tim's put, we all have our personal mindset. How would you advise we consider others' mindset and either shift it or work with it to drive a business forward? A great question, Tim. I love this one because, of course, we are going to come across people with very different mindsets to ourselves. And I'm sure you did, Dom, when you had your business. How did you sort of get over that? Did you just work with people with different mindsets, take the best from that when you were trying to do it? Or did you try and sort of create a more positive mindset from someone who perhaps had a different mindset to you?
Well, that's a great question, Tim. And absolutely being able to reserve judgment, not assume anything or presume everything, because it's not the what that matters as much as the why. Understanding the context, where someone's coming from, what did they mean to say? Maybe it didn't come out the right way, but also making everybody feel like an equal partner. I used to tell everybody in the company, no one's better than anybody else here as an individual or a person. The thing that separates people is what they do with what they have. So if everything is fair and performance based and everybody knows it's a fair shake, then it usually goes pretty well. It's only when you have favoritism, you have family situations that get involved in it, and people are feeling like, they did a lot and didn't get a lot of recognition. And I think recognition is so key. That saying we talk about, which is praise in public, criticize in private, right? And people want a pat on the back when it's deserving, and they like the applause that their teammates give them when there's something to success. And I think that's key to mindset is celebration. You know, when all you do is have the stick and no carrot, people start to become afraid. They avoid things. They do just enough because they don't want to get in trouble. When you can show that, hey, if you meant well and you tried your hardest and you learned something, making a mistake is not an issue. Making the same mistake over and over again becomes an issue. And I just love people, and I love to see people succeed. And, you know, you can't take it with you. You know, there's a saying, you're coming in the world with nothing. The worst you can do is break even. Right. What you can do to help other people is something that will always be something later on that you think about and have really good feelings. So, yeah, I think just treating people better than they expect to be treated, and that raises the bar. And there's an obligation, you know, when you do right by somebody, eventually they'll appreciate and recognize it. And how they respond to it will determine how you continue to invest in people. So, just like any investment, if you're seeing progress and you're seeing success, you want to put more into it. And the other thing is having honest conversations. Nobody likes a surprise. You know, it's like if you knew, why didn't you say something? If it was important to you, why didn't you bring it up? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to trust, right? And if you have trust, then you don't have to question things. And sometimes you just take it on faith, you know, which is like, yeah, if it's important, and I don't quite understand, but let's do it. And I used to always tell everybody, whatever works best goes next. So no matter whose idea it is, if it works out, let's all support it. If it doesn't, the next idea will get its chance. So no one's going to miss out. And team is so important. You know, having a we business and not a me business, and being able to walk away and knowing that you don't have to worry as much because you made those strong investments in people and organization. And usually, how people get brought in is how they bring other people in. So, you know, they learn from whoever taught them, and then they continue to go back to that. And that's a good way to scale and leverage and build on what the qualities are.
I mean, you always make some amazing points, Don. One of the things when we first met was about the value that I saw you add for other people and how interested you were in other people. You know, the mindset shone through to me, you know, and how you made me feel and how you made the members of a community feel was very powerful. And I try and do the same thing. And if franchisors can do the same thing with their franchisees, if franchisees can do the same thing with their customers, with their communities, then, like you say, some really magical things start to happen. I'm going to pick up on a couple of points because I think they're really interesting in terms of a mindset. Well, one thing you said earlier was when you were running your business, you got spouses, partners, brothers, sisters, friends, all involved in these celebrations, in these events. I think as franchisors, especially when franchisees are making their decision, it's really important to get those perspectives and to make sure everybody's on board. You know, having a mindset, like you say, we, not me, you know, it is really important. You know, it's a very, very important decision when you're looking at whether you should get into franchising and which business is going to be right for you and how you're going to be aligned, and to bring those other people in, to have that mindset of sharing this opportunity that you're offering to that franchise partner with their families, with their friends, so that they feel comfortable with that decision. It's really important, isn't it?
Oh, I think it's everything because, you know, one thing about getting a raise and getting more benefits, they're always appreciated, but they turn out to be entitlements after a while,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got some new money, maybe you found a good place for it, and then after a while it's anticipated or expected. But you can't put a price on goodwill. You can't put a price on friendship. And, a lot of times, at one time I had up to 72 people working directly under one roof together. A lot of times, a lot of people will live in paycheck to paycheck. And you may be their only opportunity if they get into a jam, need an airline ticket for a family occasion or something else to help them out. And that's where it really comes through, is knowing you're there for them. And they know that. And that's something you can't just move from one position to another, because eventually it is like family. And that's what you want to be, is people looking out for each other, people taking care of each other. And, it's really how much someone lends itself to the position beyond just the responsibilities, how they're treating other people who may not even be working with them. How many people are showing up for company events? How many people are volunteering to do something? I remember people would come in and they get a position and they say, I don't like starting at the bottom, and I said, well, you're only here as long as you want to be. Start climbing the ladder, right? Start doing more, learning more, being more, and you can start paying yourself more. And I actually had one gentleman who was from Pakistan, and he started out at $10 an hour just as a stock person, and within 2 years was making $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because they earned it. They built up their skill set. They took classes. They volunteered for more. And after a while, I didn't have to give them anything. They took it. And they became the example of other people. So I never cared where someone came from and what their background is what was their desire? What was their motivation? What was their work ethic? And those people will never leave you, right? The people that you gave an opportunity, they thought maybe their time had passed, or people used to treat them pretty badly. And now they see a whole new way of working and living and being. And once you start getting that momentum and that energy moving for you, it's hard to stop, and that, it's the chemistry, it's the intangibles that you can't measure on an application. Is someone aware? Is someone focused? Is someone on time? All these things you start adding up, and, a lot of people take things for granted. And they wait for something to happen to do something, and they're waiting a long time, and they're not doing much. Instead of waiting, create. And again, even if it's just your words, that one gentleman I mentioned who was making about $10 an hour, he never sat still. He was polishing, he was cleaning, he was sweeping. He wouldn't for a minute do nothing. And it inspired other people, because when someone's reaching a much higher rate of success, it motivates people to do the same thing. You look bad after a while when you're sitting around doing nothing and everybody else is working hard. Out of guilt, you will get up and start doing something. And I think, it's the psychology. If it works for this person, it could work for that person. And then pretty soon it starts working for everybody. And now you're not just buying people's time, you're buying people's thoughts. And you're having people think after work and before work. So I think those are things that you got to make that longer term investment. And what might not mean a lot to you may mean a lot to someone else. And I think that's important. So, always be of service is important.
Oh, I love it. I mean, my goodness, I've written down a lot of things, but I always did. When we did these things together, the value that you get from having a conversation with someone, and that's the same thing. If you have a conversation with a franchisee and you truly value them and you celebrate them, you're going to get a huge amount of value back. I've written down here, celebration is a key to mindset, and I always remember you saying praise in public, criticize in private. But celebration, praising, it should be public. And it's definitely part of a mindset. I have a positive celebratory mindset. I'm trying to bring the positivity of our industry together and build on that and grow from that positivity. And it's so important to have those celebrations when you can. I love that. And another thing that I want to touch on and perhaps get into in a little bit more detail is knowing they are there for you. I'm thinking about mindset, and I'm thinking about lots of franchisors that I know, and the really good ones really care, really just genuinely care about their franchisees and about the model that they put in place, and they, those franchisees know that those people are there for them. It's so important, isn't it?
Oh, it's everything, because you have to, believe that everything is supported by what they're doing, their dreams, again, their family. And, I actually made a rule that if you had something important I wanted to know about it, I would let you do it. So if someone even said my kid's in a little league game and I'd like to go to it, it doesn't happen that often. You're almost in a great position when someone asks you for a favor because now you can do a favor. And those are the things that will outweigh so many other elements. And, it's just being a good person, wanting to be around good people. And pretty soon, what happened is my shrinkage was so low, because people weren't taking stuff. And that wasn't as much as concern, but they were watching other people to make sure that wasn't leaving, the store or the warehouse. So would you rather have high turnover, which requires a lot more training, very little retention, and you saved a few dollars? I usually always paid premium. I didn't want to compete with the Targets or the Walmarts or the Kmarts. I wanted to create a much better opportunity, but also a career opportunity. They say a job is just over broke, and that's how most jobs are positioned, where it gives you enough to keep going, but not enough to ever leave. And I thought, you want people to graduate, you want people to move on to bigger and better things. And because, just like you mentioned, I've gained so much from knowing Harvey, talking with Harvey. It's like two peas in a pod after a while. And you know what to expect, but you also know the beauty of it and how we start with no script. Just in my case, a word of the day I start with on my show. And from there, it's what do you think? And then you really compliment people by wanting to know what they think. And, I will never say in an interview or a live stream, I disagree. No one asked whether you agreed. And it really diminishes what someone just said. It's a lot easier to say, well, my take on this is this, and I don't think you build yourself up by bringing other people down. And if everybody leaves happy, you've done your job. And I think that's important because the world is always in need a little bit more joy, a little bit more humor, a little bit more happiness, and just seeing sometimes tears in people's eyes. I remember wives would come up to me and shake my hand, or parents, and say, thank you so much for giving Doug a chance. And it means so much. And a lot of people had issues, but it wasn't stopping them from being successful. It was them getting out of their own way after a while and starting to understand that if you believe in me, maybe I should believe in myself a little bit more, and I think that's where it starts is, and some people just got to take that extra effort and feel you got to get the ball rolling. Too many people sit in their office, wait for something, and then maybe deal with it instead of, again, initiating. So much value in having the right mindset.
No, I completely agree. I mean, we are starting to come towards the end of the first part of the show today, but I think one thing that I really wanted to highlight, and it's one of the things that you've just touched on, Dom, and it was getting to know that person so that if they come to you and they ask you for something, if you understand your employees completely, you know those individuals. Now, this goes the same for understanding a franchisee and understanding those individuals and understanding what lifestyle that they're wanting to try and achieve beyond those numbers. You can get to a point where, like you said, Don, a member of staff really just wants to work for you. And you've got a low staff turnover, which has its own positive financial implications, but all sorts of other positivities. Now, in franchising, of course, if you can get to a point where someone doesn't have to follow a model, they want to follow the model. And they want to follow the model because you've really understood them. You've really understood what it is that they want, what lifestyle they want, how that model is going to fit with them. And really, truly understanding, really staying curious and listening to those individuals. That's a key mindset for a successful franchise business, I think. Well, look, we have now got to the end of the first section of today's show. So this is, of course, the point where my camera will go off for a little bit because it's now technically illegal, I think, to see me without a hat on. So I now have a beautiful hat, of course, that you can see. And of course, this part of the show is brought to you by PJ Murphy & Son Bespoke British Hatters. And the lovely Paul Murphy made me this hat. So if you want one like this, then speak to Paul, because it's a damn fine one. Now, this is also the part of the show where, for a little bit of time, we are going to stop talking about franchising. We're going to stop talking about mindset, possibly. And we're going to get under the hat of the guest. Now, this is also the part of the show where Don will be able to ask me any question he likes. But before he does that, we like to have a little bit of fun at this part of the show. So, Don, do you have a claim to fame, or have you met somebody famous and had an interesting encounter? Anything like that? Share something like that we don't know about the wonderful Don.
Well, that's a great question. And actually, I have, and I've been very fortunate. One of the reasons is early on, when you don't have money, you have to work with people, and the other thing is when I first started going to trade shows and conferences, since I didn't have a lot of money, most people were there to buy things. I was there to get to know media. And I brought myself into the good graces of the publishers of the magazines that supported the retail industry, mostly in the hardware home center area. And by getting to know them, they started writing articles about my business, started including me in some major conferences. I'm talking, there was one conference called Home Center Perspectives, and the top 15 CEOs of the industry would show up every year at some beautiful location and get together. And people like Home Depot, people like Lowe's, just all the chairmans. And the question I used to get is, I know why I'm here. How come you're here? And it wasn't meant to be disrespectful. And I said, well, because I'm great conversation, and I'm the only person here who you can tell anything to and can't hurt you, because I'm not big enough to do that. But through that, I ended up meeting 2 presidents of the United States. And I met President Gerald Ford in Napa Valley at the Silverado Country Club. He was there golfing and spent a day with us. And then I met President George Bush Sr. down in Palm Beach, and that was another conference, and it was really cool. Got to take pictures together and shake hands, and brought my wife into it. So you just never know, starting with a Buick as a young 20-some-year-old working just 3 days a week, and then ended up being in the company of great people. And, what you do realize is everybody is just like everybody else. If you say, what did the conversations relate to? Usually your family, your kids, what you were doing. I never once said, well, what's going on in Congress or, anything that had something to do with that. It was just getting to know people as people. And you find out you're not much different than anybody, from the person who may not be considered that valuable to one of the leaders in the world. And it shows it's possible. And I think once you know it's possible, it's something you really feel proud of, and it makes you more confident going into your next opportunity or situation. Plus, when you see how great people make you feel, that's a model to help other people do the same thing. So what comes around certainly does go around.
Love it. Love it. Wow. Presidents. I didn't even know that about you, Don. That's fantastic. Look, as promised, you now do get a chance to ask me any question you like. You don't have to, but you can ask me any question you like at this point. So if you want to, now's the time.
Well, I couldn't be happier. So Harvey, how does what you've done on live streaming affect and impact what you do, for Coffee Republic and for all the other situations in your life? How has that made a difference?
That's a great question. I think what I've always tried to do in what I do with live streaming is just add genuine value. And I suppose for me, it's allowed me to get to know the community I love. If I hadn't done live streaming, if I hadn't met you and I didn't do live streaming, then I wouldn't know all the wonderful people that have been here today, all the wonderful people that have been on the show, all the wonderful people that I contribute to make this show special. So it's broadened my horizons in the most wonderful way in an industry that I love. So it's made a huge impact to me personally, and I love it, and very, very honored to be a part of it. So thanks so much for that question. Well, we have now come to the end of today's session. So let me have a look what's going on next week. So next Tuesday, we are talking franchise belief. And we're going to be talking about how to translate your values, your passion, your beliefs into the core values and culture of an organization through marketing and through all sorts of different efforts. So please join us next Tuesday, the 24th, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that one. Hopefully the comments will be back working and they'll be definitely on the screen, because I've missed putting them up there, but I'm going to respond to every comment, and we've certainly enjoyed having your comments come through. So I first of all want to say a big thank you to everyone who has been here live today and contributed towards the show. You are what makes this show. You are what makes it special. So a huge thank you to you all. And I want to say a big thank you to my friend Don Cohen. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show. Have you got any final thoughts before we say cheerio to everyone?
Absolutely. I want to also thank the wonderful audience for contributing so much and making me feel so welcome. And a double thank you to Harvey to continue to strengthen and build our relationship that continues to grow. And I will always look forward to the time I spend with Harvey. And also anybody in the audience who has a question or wants to talk about anything that was talked about today or not talked about, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn to me. You can message me. I'm more than happy to hear from you. And if I can help anybody, that's what I'm here for. So thank you all. It already has been the highlight of my day and maybe week.
Well, thanks so much, Don. So until next week, everyone, take very good care. Cheerio.
Cheerio.